Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Too Ambitious. I am super happy that you all are joining me this morning, or this afternoon, or this evening, wherever you're joining me from. I know I have so many amazing people who show up for me internationally as well, and for that, I'm grateful. Now, if this is your first time joining this show, let me tell you a little bit about it. So, this is a show that celebrates Black women and women of color, entrepreneurs and founders who are changing the world with their innovative ideas and products. So, today, that's right, today, I have a phenomenal woman on the show. And she is someone who, when I was reading her bio, it just kept going, right? Because she had so many amazing things that she has already achieved. So, let me tell you who it is. So, joining me today, I have Dr. Sheila Akbar, PhD. That's right, you got the PhD at the end of it. She is the CEO of Signet Education, a full service academic coaching company that takes a holistic approach to managing college admissions for students and their families. Now, Dr. Akbar helped to build the successful consulting company that Signet Education is today. She is a woman of extraordinary talents. Dr. Akbar is a speaker, author, podcast host, a polyglot, and you're probably thinking, what's a polyglot? We're going to get into that. Oh, and she just happens to hold not one, but two PhDs, one in comparative literature and the other in Near Eastern languages and cultures. Yes, she's that girl. All right, so without further ado, let's have Dr. Sheila on. Hi, Dr. Sheila.
Oh, hi, Trish. I'm so glad I was off camera while you were introducing me. Oh boy, I am that girl, huh?
Yes, you are, completely amazing. And, I know, you don't even have to tell me, I know your parents are proud of you because you did all the things. Okay.
There's still an open question in my mind. Still an open question. Yeah.
I love it. Well, I'm super happy that you're here today. And, we have so much to get through because, like I said, you have such an incredible body of work and career. So, let's just set the stage a little bit. So, you're not the founder of Signet Education, but you're the CEO. And you've helped to drive the success of the company from almost the beginning. So tell me, how did that happen? How did that get started?
Yeah, so Signet was started by a good friend of mine. Well, he's a good friend of mine now. I knew him in college, and we've become very close. He and another friend of his started the company right after they graduated from college, because I think they had been tutoring sort of on the side, and they were like, let's just join forces. And then eventually they bought another company, and then before they knew it, they had a tutoring business. I entered, I'm loving this chat. I entered the picture when I was in the middle of my PhD program. I was starting to write my dissertation. I had moved back to Boston to use the Harvard libraries. I was like deep, like literally below ground, like 6th or 7th floor below ground in a little cubby in the big library, doing my research. And I needed a job. And I knew my friend had started Signet, so I approached him about it. And pretty soon I realized they were just two college kids running a business. And I had, worked in academia. I had taught at the university level. I had tutored with several other organizations. I had tutored privately. So I had a lot of ideas that I am a very vocal sharer of. And thankfully, we have such a great relationship, me and Jay. He was like, yeah, let's try some of those things. Let's do it. And so slowly I kind of revamped different areas of the business. I started with our standardized testing business because that was where I got my start in SAT and ACT and GRE prep. So I built, trainings, I hired people, sort of revamped that side of the business. And then I moved into our admissions business, where we help students apply to college and grad school. I had a lot of experience with both of those things. And we hired former admissions officers to coach our students through the process. And I spent most of my time talking to parents, explaining, how does this work, and answering their questions. And over time, my influence sort of spread throughout the different areas of our business. And I became our director of education. I think that was in 2013. And then I became COO in 2018. And then just this last May, I became CEO.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank
You
you.
know, what a journey you've been on with Signet. Truly incredible. But however, I know that because your journey has not been a straight line, you started off in pre-med at
Mhm.
Harvard, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get from that point to this point?
Yeah.
And, because I mean, when you say you went to Harvard pre-med, I mean, I would think, yeah, I mean, you're a doctor, but not like the
Not that
medical
kind of
sense,
doctor.
not
Yeah.
that kind of doctor.
Yeah. And I appreciate you calling me doctor. I told my dad when I finished my PhD, he's a medical doctor. He was the only one I was going to make call me doctor. So it's like a nice bonus when other people call me doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I have a pretty typical immigrant upbringing where, my father was a doctor and that worked for him. And so that was what I was going to do. And actually, it's something we've been exploring as a family a little bit now, why that was the emphasis for me and my older brother. As I write my book, that's going to be a big kind of part of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went to Harvard as a pre-med, as a lot of students do. But the statistics would surprise you at the number of people who actually leave Harvard still intending to do medicine. I think last year it was something like 4% of students who are graduating from Harvard were aiming for a career in medicine. And of course, the percentage of those coming in saying they want to do that is much higher. So something happens in those 4 years there. And there's a lot of great research about what that is. It doesn't just happen at Harvard. It happens at a lot of other very selective schools. We call it career funneling. But that's, a story for another day. So I was at Harvard, and I think for the first time, because I grew up in a small town in Michigan where we were the only people who looked like us.
Right.
And I felt that I had to be a good representative, right? I had to be on my best behavior. I had to achieve, all those pressures. When I got to Harvard, I didn't feel that pressure. I mean, there was a different kind of pressure, don't get me wrong, but I didn't feel that pressure around my identity anymore. There are plenty of people who look like me. There were plenty of people who thought like me, who could achieve the way I could, who were, smart and intellectually curious and things like that. And so without that sort of need to almost protect myself with those things that I was doing when I was in high school, I really both found a lot of freedom, but also just some fear. Who am I really if I was just defining myself against all of these other things?
Right.
I realized, I think right before I was supposed to take my MCAT, that I didn't want to be a doctor. And I broke my dad's heart, told him that. And then, of course, his first question was, what are you going to do instead? And I legitimately had no answer. It's like I hadn't even thought past telling him I don't want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
When he asked me that question, I was like, oh, now that is the thing I have to figure out. I have no idea. And being a doctor was something that was sort of drilled into me when I was growing up. I didn't know how to think about, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want my life to look like? What are my skills? What brings me joy? I didn't even have the language to ask those questions.
Right.
And so again, back to career funneling, the thing that everybody else was doing was going to work on Wall Street. And so I was like, okay, well, everybody else is doing it. It must not be a bad idea. There was a paycheck that was being dangled and a glamorous life in New York City. And so I went on that path, and I did a summer internship in natural gas derivatives at a small trading firm. Yeah. And then I went to Bank of America after I graduated, and I worked on their trading floor, doing sales and doing some sort of research modeling and things like that. And I, did not like it. Let's just say, putting it mildly, it was not for me. I was really confused by that, because this was something that other people were just clawing over each other to get. I knew that it was a, fairly stable, high paying, well-respected job. And I was so unhappy And I had friends telling me, hey, just collect the paycheck. You can do this job. What
Yeah.
does it matter if you're fulfilled? And that did not sit well with me. And I was like, well, yeah, I think I need something else. And so I struggled to figure out what that was.
Yeah.
And I don't know, not to make the long story longer. When I was in high school, one of the things that I really loved was poetry.
Mm.
And I was reading this mystical love poetry from the 13th century. I was reading it in English.
Yeah.
But when I went to college, I was like, okay, I'll be pre-med, but I will also study these original languages so that I can actually hear this beautiful poetry and like maybe get some other kind of meaning out of it, because of course
Right.
things are lost in translation. And so while I was going through this process of like, okay, I'm not a pre-med, what am I? Or I'm going to do Wall Street. Oh, but I hate this. And what do I do next? Poetry was the thing that I just found solace in. I just would read it and think about it. And then I don't remember the day, but there was definitely a light bulb moment where I was like, oh, maybe I should go study poetry. Maybe this is the thing that is actually calling me.
Right.
So I went back to Harvard. I did a master's. I loved it. I was a better student than I had ever been in my life.
Yes. Because you were doing what you loved.
Yeah. And it was just so wonderful. And so then I decided to do a PhD. And then I was at Indiana University for my PhD, where they have amazing resources in all of the languages and the literatures that I was interested in. And it was easy enough to add a second PhD on. And I knew that would, make me more marketable when I went on the academic job market. But of course, as I was writing my dissertation, this whole Signet thing happened. And I was like, oh, this may be the thing that I really want to do rather than be a professor. And so far, so good. It's been 14 years.
I mean, clearly it's working out. And, you said something too, is that I think what's interesting, and I think a lot of us struggle with, is that, we live in a capitalistic society and you're supposed to do all the things, right? You're supposed to get the good job, the high paying job, live in a certain place, live a certain way. But I don't think we talk enough about whether or not that makes you actually fulfilled or happy. And also too, if you are self-aware enough to realize that that is what's happening, what do you do about it? Because, most people are like, yeah, just get the check, just take the money, So kudos to you for pivoting hard,
Right. And I recognize that as an amazing privilege that I have, from, how hard my parents worked and the opportunities that they were afforded, the opportunity to walk away from a big paycheck, and not know what was coming next. I know a lot of people are not in that position. So I feel very, very lucky. And it's something that I think about a lot in the work that we do, because of course, as a private educational firm, the people who can access our services are usually on the wealthier side. So, we've made a really big effort to do pro bono programs, to partner with nonprofits and schools and other institutions, to help just not widen the already wide educational gap and access gap.
Right. Oh, that is fantastic. And I love that, you have those other avenues for people who, may not be able to afford, getting the best of the best, but they still have access. And that's what it's really all about. Dan Roth is saying, I love your untethered hunger for knowledge. I love that, by the way. So tell me a little bit about Signet Education and how it works. So we may have some parents who are joining us, we know it's all about, I know you mentioned that, early college admissions is right around the corner.
Next week.
So how does Signet work, and how does it support parents and families?
Yeah, great question. So we work with students who are in 8th grade and up. So we're mostly focused on, the teenage years. And we help, we're a little different than most tutoring companies because we do a lot of things, and that allows us to have that sort of more holistic approach. So we do subject tutoring, like if you need help in algebra or your English class. We also do standardized test prep, and we do college admissions, which most of our clients will start around maybe 10th grade or the beginning of 11th grade, working on, okay, what should my extracurriculars look like? How can I figure out what I want to major in? How do I know where I should apply? what do we do about these essays?
Right.
The whole thing. So, that kind of ramps up. So junior year is certainly the year that most people actually get started with
Yep.
the actual, milestones and work of building a college list and all of that. But some people like to have some advising earlier to just make sure they're on the right track. Or, we live in a society now, certain high schools, they call them high achieving high schools, are now the students the students who go there now are designated a high risk population because of mental health and substance abuse issues,
Right. Yeah.
because the pressure is so high. And yeah, you could sit there and be like, okay, these poor rich kids. But at the same time, they're kids.
Yeah.
They're kids. And they will also go on to be leaders in our society. And we really want, well-adjusted, healed people leading us, right? So we do a lot of work to just turn down the temperature. And a lot of that comes from taking away some uncertainty. Now, we can't make any guarantees, but we can help people understand what is this process and when do you need to do what and how do you prioritize what's actually important to you in your life. So the fourth service that we offer, we call academic coaching, which is really a mix of life coaching and executive function support, visioning. It's therapy adjacent. It's certainly not, mental health therapy, but it works in very similar ways where we're working with students to help them understand what are their values, what are their non-negotiables in life, how do they set appropriate boundaries, how do they set priorities, and all of this in the context of school. And I think it's a great place to be learning those skills because it only gets crazier as you leave high school, you leave the home, and you've got this sort of safe place to practice these skills and learn them. And again, learn that language that I didn't even have when I was in college and I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. So that's really kind of the mission, is give students these tools and these frameworks so that they can navigate their lives the way they want to and not feel, we're all going to be buffeted by these systems, capitalism and patriarchy and white supremacy and, all of the things. But if you know your worth, you know your values, and you know that those are going to change, but you have a way of checking in on those things and allowing them to evolve, and you're still staying in touch with them. That's what's going to help them, navigate all of this stuff. So that fourth service has really had an impact on the way we do college admissions, which is also very different from how most admissions consultants will do this. A lot of them will say, first of all, a lot of them won't even take on students unless they meet some certain bar, right? They'll say, you're not competitive enough for us, and they're going to turn you away. Yeah. We don't do that. A lot of them will also say, well, here's your strategy. You are going to be this kind of student. And in order to be this kind of student, you need to do this over the summer. We need to get you this internship. We will pay a PR person to place stories about you in various publications and build this sort of reputation around you. And it's definitely not organic. I'm not going to say it doesn't work, because obviously those places are still in business and it does work for many people. But for me, it feels like we're doing the student a disservice because we're not allowing them to enter their own adulthood on their own terms, right? Figure out who they are. That's what this is all about. And so we sort of use the college admissions process, yes, to help students get into great colleges and manage the stress and all the moving parts, but really as a vehicle for getting them to tune into themselves and understand who they want to be and kind of cast that forward and help them get on the path to the life that they have envisioned for themselves.
Yeah. And what I'd love to kind of get into as well is, what are some of the things that a student needs to know as they're preparing for college admissions? Like, because you don't know what you don't know. So what do they need to know?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I don't know if we have time for it.
Right.
But
do you feel like the top three?
Sure. Top three. Grades really matter more than anything, right? The classes you take and the grades you earn in them are by far the most important factor in college admission. So a lot of people get caught up on, I got to do this passion project, or I need this many volunteer hours. Like, those are all great, but if the grades aren't there, they kind of don't matter.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Grades are the foundation.
Yeah.
And part of earning good grades is playing by the rules of the system of your school.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that is a real hard thing for adolescents to do who are, seeking to individuate and um, chase their own independence. But
Right.
yeah, like living up to the expectations of those teachers and the grading
Right.
system is a game that you got to play in high school
Yeah.
if you want those grades. And sometimes that means students need to learn how to accommodate the way that their brain works so
Yeah.
that they can perform in the way that the system wants them to. And I use this language with my students. I want them to know you're not stupid. You're
Yeah.
brilliant. But
Yeah.
this system has these rules. And one of the skills you need to learn is
Yeah.
how to play by the rules of any system.
Right.
Right.
Right. That's true.
And not internalize that as I'm a failure. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. Just,
Right.
okay, this is the game. I can see it. I can play it.
Right.
It doesn't mean anything about me. Right.
Right.
So strengthening executive functions and working with neurodiverse students is something that
Mm.
we do a lot of.
Wonderful.
And then I would say the second point is character really matters.
Mm.
I mean, if you're paying attention to what colleges are saying, you might start to hear this a little bit more in their language.
Yeah.
They're talking about values. They want students with shared values. They want to see how students show up in their community, in their schools, in their
Mm.
classroom, to
Yeah.
see what kind of character they have and what will they be bringing to their campus. So it
Yeah.
really does matter how students treat each other, how
Right.
they work with teachers, how
Right.
they treat themselves.
Right.
That's a really big
Yeah.
part of it. And how that shows up. It could, it could be they think all of these things, but we want them to take some action.
Yeah.
Right? Even if that's just, I'm going to tutor this kid in my school, because they need some help, or I'm going to be kind to these people, that I volunteer with. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to start a nonprofit. I'm going to build a school. I'm
Right.
going to do all of
Right.
these, headline grabbing things.
Yeah. Be a good human, basically.
Be a good human.
Be a
Yes.
good human.
And I use that a lot to talk to parents about how, like, I know you've heard all of these things, you need to do this and that, but the thing that actually matters most is that you're raising a good human.
Yeah.
You don't have to choose between going to a good college and raising a good human. Actually,
Yeah.
good colleges want good humans.
Yeah.
So parent, you focus on raising your child with the values that you think are appropriate, the traditions that you think are valuable. Like, you raise that child.
Yeah.
And you can leave some of the college strategy to somebody else, but it shouldn't negate how you've raised your child or how you
Right.
want to raise your child. If you find that, then maybe you're talking to the wrong person,
Right.
right? Or you're aiming
Yeah.
for the wrong colleges, right?
Yeah.
If the college is actively looking for someone who has the opposite values that you and your child have, that's
Right.
probably a bad fit, right?
Yeah.
And in admissions, this is the third thing I'll say. We talk a lot about fit, but I was just at a conference and heard someone talking about belonging instead of fit.
Mm.
And that's really, I think, a better way to think about this, because yeah, of course, we want kids to go to great colleges where they're going to get an
Yeah.
amazing education, make friends, and have the opportunities they want to have. But we want to make sure it's in alignment with their abilities, their needs, their personality, right? And of course,
Yeah.
they got to get out of their comfort zone a little. They're going to grow, but we don't want this to be a place where they're like the alien in this foreign
Yeah.
country, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure there is a sense of belonging, because when there is a sense of belonging, they feel validated in their identity. They feel bolder to take chances and explore new things.
Right.
They take risks, not crazy risks, but they take more risks, the good kind of risk,
Right.
to move their future forward. So we want to look for belonging, and there are lots of ways you can kind of assess, is your kid going to belong at this or that
Right.
institution?
Yeah. And how many colleges should like a student have on their list? Because I remember when I was doing college prep just a few years ago.
Last year, basically, yeah.
Just a few years ago. I had like my list, like my top 5 that I absolutely wanted to get into. Does that still apply to have like your go-to, like I want to get into Harvard, I want to get into, a historically Black university or whatever the case may be,
Yeah. I believe building the college list is like the most important part of the entire process. We spend probably 75% of our time with families and students just building the right college list for them. So absolutely, you need a college list. The average back when we applied was about 5 or 6 schools that people would apply to. But since we applied to college, the Common Application has gone digital, and it's become easier and easier for students to file multiple applications. Like when I applied, I had to use a typewriter.
Yeah.
Right. Or I was filling some things out by pen.
Right.
But not anymore. It's all on a website, essentially. And you can apply to schools with just a click of a button. So that's great. We want to reduce the administrative work around applying, but it does mean students are on average filing more applications. And so the number of schools now that we typically recommend is somewhere between 12 and 15. There are some students who will apply to more than that. There are certainly some students who will apply to less than that. But if you're looking at highly selective colleges, I do recommend having a good list that has at least 2 likelihoods, that there's no question you're going to have those as options. And then a good number of what we call target schools, where your grades and scores and activities are sort of right in line with the average. And then just a few, maybe 3, what we call reach schools, where it's a reach for anybody. They're so selective. You could have perfect scores and perfect grades and still not get in.
Yeah. I mean, when you say 12 to 15, also I think, the price tag too, because, as Dan Roth is saying, that's a lot of application fee money. It adds up.
Yeah. And certainly, so application fees range between 50 and, 80 some dollars. So that does add up. The other thing that adds up is that typically more selective schools have what we call supplemental essays, which are additional college essays, and they have to be very specific to each school. Sometimes the topic generally overlaps, but you have to say, this is how I want to pursue biology at this college. And list, the specific opportunities. So the more schools you apply to, the more work you have to do to apply. It's not always just a click of a button. And so we really need to balance all of these things.
Yeah, for sure. And we have a lot of comments here. Tasneem saying, I'm so glad that you mentioned that students don't need to do big things to start a nonprofit. It could be as simple as taking care of a sibling while your parents are working. I help students understand that each one of them has something amazing about them. And that's wonderful. Thanks for that comment.
I love that comment. Actually, Tasneem and I are supposed to be connecting soon. I'm so glad you're here, Tasneem. She also does this kind of work. And I, can see that she and I have very shared values and priorities around this thing. This thing that you're saying about helping students understand that each one of them has something amazing about them, that's something that we also do at Signet. We actually call it the remarkable factor. And what I like to tell parents is, you don't even know it. Your kid is already remarkable. We don't have to go and find something new for them to do. They're probably already doing it. You don't think it's relevant, but it's showcasing something really special about them. And we need to make sure they keep doing it because it's so special about them, but also that colleges can see it.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And then, so, are you still tutoring too while you're running the company?
I can't help myself. I mean, this is the thing I love. I love working with students to just navigate this whole thing. And so I usually work with 5 or 6 students a year. This year I have somehow said yes to way too many, but I do still work with students.
Okay. All right. Good to know that you're continuing to achieve and wear many, many hats. And I hope you're taking care of yourself, Dr. Akbar.
I am trying.
Okay. We'll talk about that offline. So, my question to you, and I also too want to say that you do also have a podcast called Don't Force It. Tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. Podcast. Yeah. We started it last year. Maybe the year before. And just another way to get good information out there and highlight what other people are doing in this field. So sometimes it's me and one of my staff members talking about how we approach building a college list. And sometimes I have, a journalist or a professor, or I've had other practitioners come on and talk about, a particular perspective that they take on the college process or something related to high school. I want to take this opportunity to say I'm doing something I'm so excited about it. In the new year, we're going to switch to a live coaching model where we're taking applications from parents and students, and we're just going to coach them through whatever the challenge may be. And I'm really excited about that because I think it'll just help more people. And I want to represent a lot of different backgrounds. And I just think that's going to be really fun.
Absolutely. And what I love about your platform and your business is that you've really put a lot of intention behind it and made it really accessible. Because we have to acknowledge that, the barrier to entry is not equal for everybody.
Right.
So, I appreciate you for doing that in your company. So that's amazing. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents out there who will thank you for that as well. How do we get started? So if a parent is watching right now and they're like, okay, I need to get with Dr. Sheila Akbar because we need to get you right and ready, for next year's college process or this year's college process. How does the process start? Do we just go to your website?
Yeah, the website is definitely the best place to start.
Okay.
On Signet, you see the little contact button up there in the top right corner. That will take you to my colleague Emmeline's calendar, and you can book an appointment with her right there. She's fantastic, an expert in this stuff herself, has just as long and impressive of a bio as I do. And she'll talk you through, your situation and let you know how we can help. And then, we'll take it from there. If it feels like a good fit, we'll send you a suggestion of the person you can work with and then go from there.
I love it. And so, I really just admire all the work that you're doing. We have so many amazing comments as well. And I can't get to all of them, everyone, but we'll come back. I'll come back and, Dr. Akbar, if you have time, you can answer some of the questions a little bit later on. Sure. Because everyone is sort of, want to ask you stuff and share their opinions and everything. So thank you for that. And so my last question for you, Dr. Akbar, is, do you feel that you're ambitious?
I feel I'm not ambitious enough. I feel that I have been ambitious along maybe my parents' expectations. I've exceeded them. But I feel, and I think this is probably a familiar feeling for many women who are in their 40s. Wait, this is my life. I need to think bigger. I need to think bolder. And so I feel that I'm really right now at a transition point to have a different kind of ambition about the life that I want to lead. So I think I'm not ambitious enough. Can you be too ambitious? Can anyone ever be?
No. I don't think there's any such thing really, but sometimes people tell you that you are being too ambitious.
Oh, yes.
People will tell you that, because especially for women, as we know, right? But I think that if you know yourself and you know what you want, then the sky and the stars are beyond your limits, So, I want to thank you, Dr. Akbar, for taking the time to share in this conversation with me and our beautiful community who wants to know more. Anything else, shout out anything else that we need to know before I let you go about Signet or you? I mean, except for the fact that you're a polyglot. I mean,
I don't think people need to know that.
Light flex, just
Well, I think that the thing that I think about a lot is that we spend a lot of time in our jobs, in our families, in our private thoughts, thinking about what's next. How can I do more? How can I be more? And, life is meant to be enjoyed. And this is as much a reminder to me as it is to everybody else. It doesn't have to be that deep, right? Like we can just be, and that's enough. And there are a lot of forces and systems out there that reinforce the feeling that we are not enough, just being who we are. And we have to do a lot of sort of deprogramming to get through that. But I appreciate that, you're talking about my bio in such complimentary terms.
Yes.
But I also want to make it clear I could have done nothing and still feel real good about, about myself. Because I'm going to get on my soapbox. I don't need to do that. But, capitalism and white supremacy and patriarchy, they do a number on all of us, right? No matter what the color of your skin is, it's doing a number on you and selling you things like physical things, but also ideas and ideologies. And we are just humans meant to enjoy our lives, right? So I try to stay focused on that.
Yeah. We're spiritual beings having this human experience, So that's not mine, by the way. I think that was Eckhart Tolle, I think. I'm not sure.
Sounds like him, yeah.
Yeah, sounds like Eckhart Tolle. But anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Akbar. And thank you everyone for joining us on this show today, and such a rich and empowering conversation. And, if you have questions, you can follow Dr. Akbar on LinkedIn, and you can also go to her website, signeteducation.com, if you want to learn more about how you can potentially start working with her and her team to help your child get ready for college, or, just how to be remarkable. What else do they need to know to be remarkable? And guess what? They just need to be.
They just need to be.
They just need to be. So thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Dr. Akbar, for being here.
And thank you, Trish. This was great.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week for another episode of Too Ambitious. Bye, everyone.